our call to see Jesus in others. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves, and you have not noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting you do as you please, and exploit all you workers. Your fasting ends in quarrelling and strife, and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today, and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed, and for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood, then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. On the day we moved into our vicarage, I was sitting in the living room with a fellow vicar under the glow of a wonderful new lampshade. As we were chatting, my daughter came back from school and burst into the room. She looked straight up at the lampshade and stood staring at it in appreciation. I reminded her that she should have first greeted us when she walked in the room. Don't just look up, I said. Look across as well. Quick as a flash, my colleague said, "Well, there's your sermon for next week." We both laughed and got on with our meeting, but those words stayed with me. Don't just look up, look across as well. In today's passage from Isaiah, God explains his displeasure to his people. They had been carrying out their call to religious observances and duties. They had been fasting, praying, and keeping certain commandments. The problem was, though, that they had also been exploiting their workers, oppressing the poor, being unwelcoming to the stranger, ignoring the hungry, and refusing to house the homeless. In other words, God is saying, don't just look up at me, look across at my children as well. This passage also speaks directly to us today. If we are to call ourselves followers of Christ, then it must make a positive, loving, and life-affirming difference in our lives. If our faith makes a difference in our daily lives, it is priceless. If it does not, it is worthless. The reality is, of course, that all of us are too often like the Israelites in today's passage. We try desperately to follow our faith, but often end up getting our priorities completely wrong. The stand that we take as Christians on things we think are important blinds us to the things that really are important. Someone recently said to me how great it was that the church can still get on the front pages of the newspapers in its defence of our beliefs and values. But unfortunately, the beliefs and values we are busy defending do not always reflect Jesus' teaching. The real message of the gospel, the message of liberation, grace, hope, peace and joy, often gets left behind. Sometimes we fear we are like the story of the Russian Orthodox Church in 1917. While the revolution was raging all around them, they were holding a council to discuss liturgical colours. God calls us to realign our priorities. Today's Isaiah passage reflects Jesus' identification with certain groups of people. In fact, scholars believe that Jesus told the parable in Matthew 25 with this Isaiah passage in mind. Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or ill in prison, and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. So when we do live out our faith in our everyday lives, and when we let our hour at church on Sunday infuse and enthuse the rest of our week, this is exactly what we will be doing. Finding God in everyone we meet and treating them as if they were Jesus himself. That rather changes that phrase that we started with. Don't just look up, look across as well. The paradox is that when we look across at our neighbours, we actually are looking up because we are looking at Jesus. So remember, don't just look up at him, but look across at him too. Reflection. The phrase that used to adorn many teenage bracelets in America, "What would Jesus do?" has almost become a parody. But that should not mask the importance of that very important question. Spend some quiet moments today reflecting on where Jesus' priorities would be channeled if he were living today. Don't just look up. Look across as well. Think of your own daily life. Are the people we need to look across at today? Who are the people to whom we need to give our time, attention, and resources?